I'm Sue Overbeck, Susan Overbeck, Jim's wife. We've been together for 46 years. I'm also an artist, and my work features more on the paradisiacal than the very controversial subjects that Jim thinks that he must put out there into the world. This is a painting I did about the never-ending story. Here we have the hero, Bastian. Here we have the luck dragon, who's a lovely character. And here we have the golden-eyed empress. I met Jim at the latter stage of my art college career. I was doing fine art, painting and sculpture at St Martin's School of Art, and by chance I was at a pub, Finch's Pub, which was full of artistic people. It was a famous venue, so I met Jim there, and he had quite a fearsome reputation on a lot of fronts, but due to his persistence I became his girlfriend and I got totally involved in his life and his quest.
After I left the army, I pursued my interest in the philosophy of mathematics, philosophy of logic, for 9 years, with an almost abnormal intensity. I was interested in trying to find an answer to a technical philosophical problem in set theory, which was invented by a mathematician called Cantor. He and several of the people in the same field went insane pursuing this difficult. They were examining the infinite, but in particularly difficult ways. I thought this was just the type of thing I could sort of whet my knife on. I mean, it required a vast amount of intelligence, and vanity being what it was. I thought that I could come up with a solution to this, and so I spent 9 years, but maybe in my 9th year, I'd written a large book on this, which I thought would make me famous. It was called The Theory of Intermediate Cardinal Numbers. In other words, I believed that I believed that I'd discovered things called transfinite fractions, completely unknown in mathematics. My paintings are received differently according to the mind that they fall upon. I've had one middle-aged sort of very dumpy lady run out of a major exhibition almost screaming down the road. On the other hand, I once had a sort of cortege of family with maybe 15 members who gently drove by me, almost in homage, saying, "We look forward to hearing about your paintings travelling around the world. There's something like the likes of which we've never seen before." The first great catastrophe amongst mathematical genius was a man called Carl Weierstrass. Weierstrass investigated the foundations of real numbers, i.e. rational and irrational numbers combined. After him, the great disaster was Georg Cantor, who was my boyhood hero, the man who proved that there was more than one kind of infinity. Kurt Gödel, of the famous incompleteness theory of 1931, also went mad and ended up destroying himself. And von Neumann, John von Neumann, the Hungarian Jewish mathematician, went absolutely insane, because he was the man who did the mathematics of the hydrogen bomb, and like a fool he stood out and watched it when it went off. The radiation destroyed him in the most dreadful way. A man who spoke 7 languages faster than you could speak one, whose ability to solve mathematical problems with inordinate complexity and difficulty, it just wiped his mind. He died screaming. Apparently he screamed for 3 days in agony. And so the one that didn't, and I think up there with them, and possibly a man who superseded them mathematically, logically and intellectual, is shown at the top of the painting with hopefully with a slight grin on his face. That's the one that survived and realised that mathematics, properly conceived, leads into the divine. It's not simply a mundane and or secular subject. It's something that was put there on earth, higher mathematics, as a barrier to the divine by God, and the one who can unlock the signifiers into divinity is the greatest mathematician of them all. No, I said, It's the Almighty himself. He said to me, just after I'd met Sue, like, in the most beautiful way, I gave you infinities to play with and an infinity to search for. That infinity I found, a specific, a transfinite fraction. But what he really meant was, beyond this, there is the infinity of everlasting life. I was sitting at my grandmother's, she's a complete sweetie, my grandmother, and I'd written the book, and then the most incredible series of events took place. A being entered the room, this not a human being, but a divine being which was like the head of a man and the body of a bird. And this was illuminated in the most incredible ways. And when I saw it, I was like, what? What? And I was almost transfixed with, I wasn't having a nervous breakdown. This was not madness. This was a reality. And I looked at this being, and I looked at my mathematics, and I thought, this is not in my study of infinity. I was doing mathematics as an instrument for truth. And I realized that mathematics could not be perfect because it contained incongruities and anomalies, antinomies about the infinite, which were unanswerable on the mortal level. So I was seeing an immortal being, some kind of, just to this day, I don't know what kind of divine entity he was. But I took my book, which was 9 years in the making, and I threw it on my grandmother's fire. And as it burned, I didn't have a copy. Do you understand? I wept. It was like everything I'd worked for 9 years has just been destroyed. Not long afterwards, I went to see a particular professor, and I wrote down what I could remember of this into 2 small notebooks, took them to him. There were 6 professors, 5 professors at the table, 2 mathematicians, and others. One was a professor of art, etc., to see whether I'd win this scholarship. And the mathematics professor tried to take me on set theory, which was a stupid mistake. I cut him to ribbons, and the other professors couldn't help it. They were like laughing, what the hell have we got here? There is this like tough looking kid in a leather jacket, because I was a tough guy. I was extremely physically fit. I didn't look like an intellectual. Most mathematicians are sort of like, they're like scrawny with big glasses, and I didn't fit the bill. So, but I won the scholarship, but decided to change. And so I was in a small town, and I saw an intelligent looking priest went by, and I said, excuse me, do you mind if I buy you a cup of coffee? I just want to ask you a few questions about which is the best place to study theology in England. And I could have gone to Oxford or Cambridge or wherever. And we had a cup of coffee. He's a very nice guy. And he said he thought that the best doctrinologists were attached to St. Chad's in the University of Durham. So I applied, went and got there. Okay. Then I'd met Suze, and we lived in a small cottage in a place called Overthorpe in Oxfordshire. And I was now in great doubts about what I was going to do. You know, I couldn't pursue mathematics, but I thought I would do Greek and theology or whatever. And I was standing by the fireplace in this cottage in the most... to this day, I have never experienced anything like it or even near it. A feeling of peace that was so absolutely wonderful just came over me, and this is a disturbed emotionally. I am incredibly disturbed. As I stood there, Jesus of Nazareth walked into my room, and as God is my judge, and if you ripped me to pieces with white hot pincers, I would not deny it. He walked into my room and came up to me, and I don't know how to describe it in human words. It's as if he stepped into me. It was like from more than one dimension. Do you understand? This was like a multi-dimensional divine being. And in that second, my life, I was metamorphosized. The technical name for it is deification or apotheosis. In that minute, I saw the world as God sees it. Its horror was absolutely beyond description. In the next few months, Christ visited me on several occasions and showed me dimensions that most people do not exist. I was taken into the third heaven, like St. Paul, in body or out of body, I know not which. And on 2 occasions, I was put into hell. I've had priests, professors of theology. The thing about Jim, everyone knows he's a big genius, but you have to realise he is insane. And the reason he's insane is because he actually said that Jesus of Nazareth walked into his study as if the Lord High God would come to see such proletarian vermin or whatever else they mean. It's impossible for God to do this. He would see them.
I'm Ralph. I'm Jim and Sue and Jill's close friend, good friend. And I'll tell the story of how I met Jim. It was a very long time ago now. I was 17 years old. I lived in a town in the northeast of England called Durham, and I grew up there, although I'm originally an American. And myself and my good friend Mark Allen, we heard a story of an extraordinary individual. People were reportedly having visions, people who met him, and this really got us interested. So eventually we tracked him down. It was totally in the spirit of adventure. I mean, we weren't really looking for some life-changing experience. We just thought it sounded interesting. And when we met him, we were kind of surprised by him, by how approachable he was, and very quickly we realised that he was a pretty extraordinary intelligence. But we really got on, and soon after that I built what was a very close personal friendship, and it surprised me enormously how much Jim wanted from me. He wanted me to come and live with him and Sue and to set up my life with them. It was a difficult part in my life. I was young, and to have such an important moment happen then was difficult to come to terms with. And at first I wasn't sure, but when I realised I loved them both, then I came to live with them. It was when I was 19 or 20 years old.
The first time I descended into hell and saw the entities there, the words foul, despicable, it would be like being put in front of Mengele in Auschwitz, but these were like really ferocious entities. I mean, unimaginable.
Jim is the only person I know who has actually had a complete and full experience of a meeting with Christ. And I grew up in a clerical family, and I've talked about this with many people. But this happened to him.
The second time I went, the Almighty gave me armour of light and like a helmet like of sunshine. And I was absolutely, utterly invincible and invulnerable, and all these monstrous, these abominations, these filthy, vile, evil, they're more disgusting than moving excrement, and they fucking bite. They really are like, I've seen them since. They've paid visits. I've seen Satan. Also, he paid me a visit when I did theology, and I was walking across a field, and this atrocity, this father of all mutilation, genocidal impulse, psychopathy, psychosis, this monster, I've seen him, and I've also seen some of his offspring. People don't believe in demons. They think they're things that belong to an infantile or an infant stage of the rise of humanity. They still exist. Holy monks on Mount Athos, now as then, or monks and nuns who are contemplative, who really are in Christ, know about these things. So do I.
These photos were taken not long after I met Jim. He's wearing his legendary T-shirt. I'd met him maybe the year before, and I went down to London to see all his old haunts, like the famous Fincher's Wine Bar. And I met his friend Pilly. She was an art gallery owner, bohemian, a nice lady. And she let us use her house as the set for the photographs.
As soon as I'm a paragon of patience. Is that true?
Oh, what is that?
What, it's an
That's one big
octopus?
chunk of food.
It's octopus.
I don't think you actually defrost it like that.
Yes, I do.
I know you do.
That's when we had models, isn't it? Modelling the clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is when we used to sell the antique clothes and all that. That's
Beaded dresses.
Well, how long did this go on for?
well, we did the boutique and gift shop 7-8 years. When we started, it was with anything we could get our hands on, but
A chess cafe.
quickly we built it. We built it into something quite nice, and we ran quite a successful business for a few years, for as long as Jim could stand it, really.
True.
He used to study a lot, but being a businessman was something that didn't rest easily on his shoulders. He really wanted to do something creative. Jim is not easy to get through to sometimes. His higher intellectual self is often hidden, but I have seen him in ways that I've never seen anyone else. The extraordinary power of intelligence combined with spiritual knowledge. He's the only person I know who's capable, really, of lifting another soul. And this, which you see here in the gallery, this art is just one expression of the whole vision. It's an attempt to get the divine into the earthly realm, to allow it to break through the immense barrier of crap that we've built between God and ourselves. And of all the people I've met, he is certainly the most effective at this. About the time we were pulling out of the business and about the time we were closing down the shop and looking for other things, Jim met Jill, and she kind of joined us as a little group of friends. And
Well, she needed us at that time, didn't she? Though she'd been through a bit of traumatic life experiences.
well, she had, but
So
also
you can go. I mean,
but also
explain deeper.
her ex-fiance and her split up, and I think really it was Jim's decision. I mean, she is Jim's mistress, really. I mean, at first we weren't brilliantly happy about that, were we?
I was surprised.
It was a surprise, but it's been a very, over time, it's just become nicer and nicer having her around. She's just such a lovely person.
Basically, I first met Jim and Ralph and Sue because I was the girlfriend of a friend of ours. And then what happened was, in the course of the next couple of years, I separated from this person that I was with, and I became the friend and girlfriend of Jim and Ralph and Sue, and it was a very interesting and complicated part of my life, but it was very exciting part of my life. And then I'm happy to say that I've stayed together with them ever since, and we've been from Birmingham to Devon to Kent briefly, and then we've spent the last 8 years together in Italy, having lots of fun and adventures along the way.
This is my bathroom. It's not finished yet. I mean, we started on it, Suze and myself, and I sort of did this bit, and she did all the flowers. But most of the art, Some of this is me, but I think that no, that might be Sue's. No, that's me. Sue's, me. You can usually tell if that's we. That's Susan's. If they're sort of like Brogelart of Bosch, you know, it's me. Though I did do this. I did do the Most Holy Mother of God. This one here is really quite obnoxious. I've been banned for this innumerable times. Every time I put it up, 1,000 people on these different arts, they all start squealing like snitches and grasses and stool pigeons. Smegmatic necrosis. Atheists' fuckable lavatories. This is part of the Brothels of Hell series, and it says shag boy in the bag atheist shit stays. Not very nice, I must admit. But then again, atheism isn't very nice, and it's a sort of syphilis of the mind caused by Satan.
Is atheism that bad?
I think it is. Yeah, you're really caught. You're fucked over. I mean, I was an atheist for many years. I was an atheist for 10 years, and then it's only when I know what I know now, looking back, it's like it's a parlous state of to be in. If you get killed and you're an atheist, you definitely are in absolute shit street. Dante described hell as rivers of excrement. Believe me, they're excremental, but they're scolding. It's horrendous. I don't want anyone to go there. That's why I do this. Atheists aren't my enemies. I'm actually trying to say, I've seen God. I know he exists. I've been allowed to see it. The first time he showed me heaven, seriously, I went on one knee and looked up, and the glory, the impeccable majesty, and I saw my horse. I recognized that's the horse I rode in heaven. And then he was taken away, but I did see it, and whether you believe it or not, atheism is basically the belief that no God exists. It's complete and absolute nonsense. You cannot prove it. God does exist. I've seen him, and I can prove he exists. I really don't want people to confront the demon, hell. Hell is it's like saying I don't want anybody to be put into an Auschwitz oven, but it's 1 billion times worse. It's unspeakably bad.